What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks so much for clicking here on another video. And today we're going to be talking about the latest film from writer-director Celine Song, and that film is called Materialist. Written and directed by Celine Song, this film stars people like Dakota Johnson, Pedro Pascal, Chris Evans, and many more. So I actually had the chance to check out this film a little bit early, but unfortunately missed the screening because it was at the exact same time as my early screening for How to Train Your Dragons on the same night at the same theater. That happens from time to time, and you kind of have to choose one over the other, but I wanted to see this film in theaters for sure, especially on its opening weekend, because I really enjoyed the last film, the first film from Celine Song, known as Past Lives. It was one of my favorite films of the year that it came out, and I just think she created a very realistic drama that pulled me into a romance in a way that I haven't been pulled into a romance in quite some time. So when I saw she had a new film coming out, once again in collaboration with A24, I was definitely excited to check out the film. So with all that said, let's get into what this film is all about, and then we'll get into my thoughts on the film. Materialist focuses on the character of Lucy, a savvy New York matchmaker played by Dakota Johnson, who orchestrates couples with icy precision, until a wedding brings her face to face with both her charming billionaire suitor, Harry, played by Pedro Pascal, and her struggling actor ex, John, played by Chris Evans. As she juggles romance and economics, Lucy begins to question whether love can ever survive the financial spreadsheets she uses to evaluate it, especially when her carefully constructed world starts to crack. Immediately, what I can start this off by saying is that similar to Celine Song's last film, Past Lives, I think she really captures a great sense of realism here. This one's a little bit more of a romantic comedy than her last film that was far more of a drama, but this film definitely leans into drama as well. I wouldn't say it's more of a comedy than it is a romance, and it definitely has those dramatic elements that you would want in a film directed by Celine Song, but just in a romance in general. And romance can be, hit or miss with a lot of people. It's a genre that's not going to work for everybody. It's a genre that feels very samey and tropey and very predictable. And while I do think that this film falls into that a little bit more than her previous film, I do think that this film has a lot to say, especially about the modern day of dating. I think it goes without saying that in the modern day, with all the apps and social media, expectations are higher than they've ever been. And it's something that I hear from my peers all the time. There's so many of my friends, men and women, who go on dates with people, start dating people for a short window of time, maybe even a year or 2 years, ultimately to find themselves in a situation where it doesn't feel like that romance is truly there. It feels like they're being loved or being, kind of dated simply because of their assets, what they bring to the table, what their financial standings are, or because of some other situation. Now, of course, that's not everybody. That's painting things with a broad brush. There is love to be found out there. And I'm very grateful to have been with my wife since we were pretty young. We've grown up together. We've been together almost 11 years now. So I'm kind of grateful to have missed the modern day of dating. But this film, in a lot of ways, is making commentary on that modern state of dating and the expectations that come with it. And so Dakota Johnson's character is an interesting one because she's so sure of herself when we first see her at the beginning of the film. She's been responsible for 9 marriages now. She's pulling people together. She's got that charm. She knows what it is that will make people click because she's able to build spreadsheets. She can look at a page of notes and look at all these attributes and checking off the boxes of what one person versus the other person wants and how that's going to click with these different couples. And so because she has such a great success rate, she has this idea that she understands what love truly is. And so when she meets Harry, the character played by Pedro Pascal, who's this billionaire who in every way is perfect, she calls him a unicorn in the film, she's immediately intrigued. You got this dude who's got all the money. There's no stress about going to a fancy restaurant. There's no stress about having the fancy nice car, here, come into my nice, multi-million-dollar apartment. Like, life is good. There's no stresses there. He's a handsome, good-looking guy. But over the course of the film, she starts to kind of find herself struggling when she's reintroduced to John, which is Chris Evans' character, who they broke up back in the day because everything was nickel and dimed. It was struggles with money all the time that caused stress, that caused arguments, and ultimately made some of the romance kind of disappear because it felt like it was far more about, trying to make ends meet or trying to chase passions or dreams than instead of just loving each other. And this is all really highlighted in terms of her view towards what romance can be and how it isn't always kind of structured based on a spreadsheet. When a specific moment happens near the middle of the film, and I don't want to spoil it, but she sets up these two people for a date and it does not go well. And it's because everything seems right on the surface, But of course, you're never going to know what's going to happen behind closed doors. And when we learn what happened behind closed doors on this date that she set up, she's looking at her spreadsheet, she's looking at her notes, she's struggling with the notion that how could she have set two people up and how could it have gone so wrong based on all the data she had. But this film in a lot of ways is really about noting the fact that it isn't about the data, it isn't about the spreadsheets, it isn't about the financial aspect. While those are definitely things you want to have in any relationship, you want to have somebody who's financially stable, somebody who's working towards something, somebody who's passionate. You also want to have somebody who ultimately just loves you for you, that wants to stick through the hard times. And I think that this film in a lot of ways really tackles that. It also highlights that sometimes love is just like random. You really don't know who you're going to be in love with. It's not really something that you can ask for. It's not really something that you can set up yourself. Sometimes you just love somebody because you love somebody and you're willing to go through things. And even if you went through hard times, you can still love somebody, even if they do things you don't like at times, even if they have certain tendencies that you don't like at times. That doesn't mean that you put up with abuse or somebody who doesn't treat you well. But when I look at like my personal situation, my wife and I have had to grow together. We were really young when we started dating, and now I'm about to be 32. She's going to be 30 next year, and we've grown up together. But in our early 20s, we were a little bit more hard-headed. We would argue over things that were so silly and dumb. We would stress about things that didn't need to be stressed about. And ultimately, we look back at those days now and laugh. And I do think that in the modern day, there's a lot of people who will just be with somebody because it seems like it's right for them or because they don't think they can do better. And I think that this film really highlights that love is the most important thing. And I think that the cast here is really great. It's shot on film from what I understand. You can definitely tell the cinematography of the film looks really nice. There's a really nice, calming, subtle musical score that the film definitely has throughout the course of the film that I do think really adds to the overall experience. And I think you have a really great cast here. I would argue that this is maybe my favorite performance from Dakota Johnson. She's an actress that's been in a lot, but I haven't really been a huge fan of everything she's been in. I won't lie. Whether it be 50 Shades of Grey or the most recent like Madam Web, I've never thought she was a terrible actress, but I've never seen her in anything where I was like, wow, I'm impressed by her as an actress. Until now, I think this was the movie that made me think, all right, I really like her. There's a charm to her. She did a good job of playing this character who has narcissistic, judgmental tendencies and also is somebody who is maybe full of themselves at times, but somebody who just ultimately wants to be loved, somebody who wants to feel valued. And I think that that's really what this film is about. The notion of being valued outside of just being able to be valued on a financial level. Sometimes being valued just means being special to somebody else in a way that you're not special to anybody else. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing. I think that this film captures that. And I think Dakota Johnson really does a great job of capturing that kind of a character who's complex throughout the runtime of this film. And then you have Pedro Pascal, who's just charming. I will say I think his character could have been developed a little bit more. He does feel a little bit surface level, but I do think that was kind of the point, because the whole idea is you have this rich billionaire guy who's seems like he's got everything right on the surface, and you do get to know a little bit more of what's going on behind the scenes with this character. You do get to kind of see a little bit behind the facade he puts on at a certain point in the film. I just wish they would have explored him a little bit more. Chris Evans is great in the film as well. I think he's another one that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more exploration of, but I think compared to Pedro Pascal, they explore his character a lot more, and you can definitely feel for his character. This is probably like the skinniest I think I've ever seen Chris Evans in a movie, and maybe it's just because I'm so used to seeing him so jacked in the Marvel films. But yeah, I thought he was really great here as this, down on his luck actor who loves this woman unconditionally and fumbled the bag in the past and is trying to do everything he can to try to pull her back in. I think it goes without saying that Chris Evans is a charming actor, and so he definitely employs that charm here for sure. But overall, I think this is a very well acted film that has some nice things to say. I think it does lean into some romantic tropes and some elements that make it predictable, so I can't necessarily say that this film blew me away or had me crying, but I found myself enjoying the film. I found it to be very charming. I think it's very well made. I don't think it's as good as Celine Song's last film, Past Lives, but I do think it's certainly a welcome entry into her filmography, and I really look forward to seeing what she does next. So that's going to be my thoughts on Materialists. Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say down below. So did you like this film? Did you not like this film? Or are you planning on checking it out? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.